It's Wednesday, July 12. In the headlines, more than 1,000 positions made permanent in the Jamaica Constabulary Force. In business news, Jamaica emerges as a potential fintech hub in the Caribbean. Regionally, Barbados calls for decisive action on sustainable development goals. Internationally, NATO stops short of Ukraine invitation, angering President Zelensky. And in sports, we're on the pitch with cricket. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Minister of Education and Youth Fayval Williams says this year's Summer Academy got off to a smooth start. She says thousands of students have registered in attendance.
We have 57 schools across the regions that are in operations. We are expected to impact some 7,800 students in the face-to-face modality and another 20,000 plus students in the virtual space. The difference between the face-to-face and the virtual: for the face-to-face, those are students who need support in terms of literacy and numeracy. And in the virtual space, those are students who are almost at mastery, still needing a little bit of support to get them into mastery.
Minister Williams says 28,000 students are being targeted.
It's a lot targeted that it's been in the past, but we are seeing where our targeted interventions are producing results.
Meanwhile, the Education Minister gave an update on the distribution of textbooks, explaining that this year her team is ahead of the curve.
For our grades 1 to 4 math textbook, distribution will commence July 24th. For grade 5 to 6, Rediscovering Maths, distribution already begun in several parishes. Distribution is expected to be completed by July 20th.
She says the distribution of English textbooks for grades 4 to 6 is set to be completed by July 30.
First steps in science, again for grades 4 to 6, distribution started. So too, social studies for grades 4 to 6, distribution already started. For grades 7 to 11, we're happy to say as well, distribution has started there and expected to be completed by July 30th. For information technology, for our grade 11, we have completed the distribution there. In terms of the e-books for English, grade 7 to 11, the ministry has already received some 11,000 licenses and is in the process of assigning the e-books to schools and to the respective students.
Minister Williams gave the update during this Wednesday's post-cabinet press brief. Approximately 800 youngsters from 14 regional countries are set to land in Jamaica for this year's Caribbean Cadet Camp. The biennial event, to be held from July 15 to July 29, is being held under the theme Empowering Cadets, Tomorrow's Leaders. It's one of the marquee activities for the Caribbean Cadet Association. It also forms a part of the slate of engagements of the Jamaica Combined Cadet Force. The participants will converge on the grounds of Clarendon College for a series of training and exhibition activities. Governor General, His Excellency Sir Patrick Allen, and Chief of Defence Staff Rear Admiral Antoinette Wemyss Gorman are among the officials expected to attend several of these sessions. The civilian establishment of the Jamaica Constabulary Force was increased, paving the way for more than 1,000 positions being made permanent. National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang made the announcement while addressing the House of Representatives on Tuesday. He says the workers had been operating on a fixed-term contracts for several decades. This, he explained, limited their access to pension and health benefits. Dr. Chang explains that the change was necessary and will benefit the most vulnerable group of workers in the JCF. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, gave an update on the recently concluded 45th meeting of Caricom heads of government. Addressing Wednesday's post-cabinet press brief, Minister Johnson-Smith noted the international leaders from several countries, including the United States and Japan, who attended the event, which she explains shows the global recognition of the Caricom bloc.
We were graced with the presence of the Secretaries General of the United Nations, the Commonwealth, the OAS, and the ACS, as well as, of course, the heads of other international organizations, the head of the FAO for the region. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo of South Korea was present, President Kagame. I say that because where persons ask whether Caricom is relevant, the fact is that there are, that internationally, many countries, many institutions, many regional groupings have become used to dealing with the body as opposed to 14 or 15 individual relationships, and accordingly, it does hold quite a bit of relevance.
She also spoke on the agreement of conference to work towards free movement of Caricom nationals by March 31, 2024.
So that those who wish to exercise this right to move freely would be able to remain indefinitely in another member state of the community. This is a massive agreement, and for those of you who remember where we're even coming from 2016 and beyond, and even our recent concerns in respect of movement to Belize, you'd recognize that Caricom heads taking a decision to say that persons, that Caricom nationals must be able to move and remain indefinitely in brother and sister countries within the region is a massive move in terms of political will.
She says the ability to move and work freely is the most fundamental that nationals can experience in the significance of Caricom.
All the things that we had been working for, simplification of the skilled movement certification, recognition of security workers, domestic workers and agricultural workers, expanding the category of workers that are recognized in other Caricom countries to include those which were of most relevance to Jamaica nationals seeking to move.
Minister Johnson-Smith says there's quite a bit of work that is left to be done to ensure the rights of nationals who move within the region. Time now for the business report with Danita Rodney.
Market intelligence firm CB Insights has highlighted Jamaica's rapid rise as a fintech hub in the Latin America and Caribbean region. According to a recent report, last year witnessed the second largest investment year on record for Jamaica, with the emergence of 7 new companies across the insurance, payments, and banking segments. The country has joined other markets such as the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico in establishing itself as a fertile ground for innovation. Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Tuesday, July 11, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.43. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $117.23. The pound sterling traded for $200.40, and the euro sold for $173.71. In JSE trading, the JSE index advanced by 82 points. The junior market index declined by 90 points. The combined market index declined by 558 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 497 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 108 stocks, of which 38 advanced, 55 declined, and 15 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Barita Investments Limited, and Caribbean Cream Limited. Stocks declined for Access Financial Services Limited, Blue Power Group Limited, and the CAC 2000 Limited. trading firm were 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Verbal Preference, AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, and Berger Paints Jamaica Limited. The overall volume leaders were Wigton Wind Farm Limited Ordinary Shares with over 3 million units, Spurtree Spices Jamaica Limited, and Trans Jamaican Highway Limited with over 2 million units. In regional stocks in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund posted a volume of 22 shares. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Government of Barbados Bonds Series I was the sole security trading over 12,000 shares. In regional business, the Inter-American Development Bank (IDB) has approved over $50 million for several key areas in Guyana's private sector. More in this report.
To date, we have approved in Guyana 8 transactions totaling approximately $58 million in agribusiness, transports and logistics, financial and energy sector, and it's our commitment to keep growing those numbers. And as Minister Singh always said, I would like to sign a loan with a private sector every week. So that's why we are here today and to keep this great partnership.
You haven't even made an indent. You're merely scratching the surface without leaving a mark. $56 million is a good start. I think you said about 6 or 8 transactions. 8 transactions totaling 56 or 58 million US dollars. That's a great start. It's a great start that you're intermediating through 3 banks. That's good. But you're only scratching the surface. We would like to see IDB Invest doing more, far more, in Guyana. And if it's any incentive, like I said, we're going to be doing the same with the IFC, so I want you to stay ahead of the game and demonstrate that you're the preferred provider, you're the preferred multilateral provider of financing to the private sector of Guyana.
In international business, U.S. stocks rose on Tuesday, helped by optimism ahead of key inflation reports.
The Dow jumped just under 1%, the S&P 500 gained about 0.7%, and the Nasdaq added about 0.5%. Wall Street will be looking to see if price pressures have abated when the Consumer Price Index report is released on Wednesday. But Ross Mayfield, investment strategy analyst at Baird, reminds investors that its core CPI, which strips out volatile gas and food prices, that the Federal Reserve is watching to determine its next move on interest rates.
I think we'll see a big deceleration in headline CPI, but even if we were to come in below consensus expectations, say sub 3%, if core CPI proves sticky around that 5% number, it's going to be really hard to get the Fed off their predetermined path.
Ahead of earnings from big banks later this week, shares of J.P. Morgan Chase rose after Jefferies upgraded the stock to buy. The S&P Banking Index also rose. Among the S&P 500's biggest gainers, shares of Activision Blizzard soared 10% after a U.S. judge ruled that Microsoft may proceed with its planned acquisition of the video game maker. Shares of Microsoft gained slightly. Salesforce shares climbed 4% after the cloud services firm said it would increase prices of some of its cloud and marketing tools for the first time in 7 years. And Amazon.com shares edged up amid its Prime Day 48-hour shopping event going on this week.
In market data for oil benchmark Brent futures breached $80 a barrel for the first time since May after U.S. inflation data suggested the interest rate hike cycle in the world's biggest economy is set to finally cool. Brent futures were up 51 cents at $79.91 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate crude was up 62 cents at $75.45. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, with the 2030 timeline set for attaining the 17 Sustainable Development Goals just 7 years away and the SDG goals at the halfway point, Barbados has told fellow UN member states the time for decisive action is now, as Agenda 2030 is a plan to save the world.
If we are to be guardians of our future generations, then we must ensure that we do everything in our power to secure a sustainable future. Earlier this year, The Secretary General of the United Nations proposed a stimulus to assist with advancing the 2030 agenda. The SDG stimulus aims to offset challenging market conditions faced by developing countries and to accelerate progress through the SDGs through investments in renewable energy, universal social protection, decent job creation, healthcare, quality education, sustainable food systems, urban infrastructure, and, of course, digital transformation. The stimulus also calls for a significant increase in financing for sustainable development to the tune of at least $500 billion per year. This is why, my friends, the Bridgetown Initiative is so important, as it creates access to resources which states can use to remedy their crises and finance much-needed adaptation and mitigation measures, in particular with respect to the climate crisis. The Bridgetown Initiative, however, would also increase official sector development lending for the Sustainable Development Goals to $500 billion per year, as has just been discussed. Mobilize private sector investment, we are hoping, to over $1.5 trillion per year for green and just transformations to ensure that we become more resilient and adapt to the new reality.
In 2021, we doubled our international climate finance commitment to $5.3 billion. This will help developing countries fight climate change and address biodiversity loss around the world. And it will help low and middle-income countries already dealing with the impacts of climate change build sustainable, climate-resilient economies and futures. We all need to be a part of this work. And with only 7 years until 2030, we must seize this moment with urgency and excitement. J'ai bien hâte de travailler avec vous tous au cours des mois et des années à venir pour atteindre des résultats tangibles pour le bien des gens qu'on représente. So let's roll up our sleeves, keep doing the hard work of building a better world.
On Tuesday, Trinidad and Tobago recorded its first confirmed case of the monkeypox virus. More from TTT Live.
The Ministry of Health says the patient is a middle-aged man with travel-related history. According to the ministry, he was tested earlier today and the sample was then sent to the Caribbean Public Health Agency's laboratory via the Trinidad Public Health Lab. The relevant country medical officer of health has initiated the local public health response, which includes contact tracing. The Mpox virus continues to circulate worldwide, with the World Health Organization's update reporting over 88,000 cases detected globally amongst 112 countries and a total of 149 deaths. The Mpox virus can range from mild disease to severe illness and is spread through close contact through respiratory droplets. Common signs and symptoms may include a skin rash or mucosal lesions, which can last 2 to 4 weeks, accompanied by fever, headache, muscle aches, back pain, low energy, and swollen lymph nodes. Anyone experiencing these symptoms is advised to visit their nearest health facility. The public is also reminded to maintain good hygiene practices, such as hand washing or sanitizing where appropriate. The ministry says at this time, the available monkeypox vaccines would be utilized for contacts of known positives only.
The Caribbean Development Bank will present a report to the Caribbean community, Caricom, within the next few weeks, outlining recommendations to fill the gap in intra-regional travel created after LIAT went out of commission.
In the coming weeks, Caricom is expected to receive a report from the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, with recommendations on how to address the issue of interregional travel. Caricom Chairman, Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt, said the CDB was commissioned to conduct a study to examine Caribbean air traffic and make recommendations on how to address the problem created by the absence of LIAT.
We mandated the CDB to engage in a study and to examine air transport within the Caribbean community and to come up with some recommendations on how we should go about addressing this issue with the absence of LIAT. The CDB has completed this study. It presented to us in the next couple of weeks. They have firm numbers in terms of the cost. They're looking at an 8-year or 7-year program cost. And I'm hoping that we can get the buy-in of all of us in respect to this entity, which we believe will complement what CADET is doing, will complement what Caribbean Airlines and others are doing.
Skerritt said Caribbean Airlines, CAL, and other regional carriers, such as Inter-Caribbean Airlines and Bahamas Airlines, are among the regional carriers that are attempting to fill the void left by LIAT. Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley announced that his government had received and accepted the CAL strategic plan to procure additional equipment for expanded operations in the region. He announced that the airline was in talks with the Barbados government, and Prime Minister Mia Mottley confirmed that they will be signing an agreement with the airline soon.
We actually are about to sign an agreement with CAL if it hasn't been signed by the airport, even as we've spoken. As Prime Minister Skerritt said, this issue is not a simple issue. And the truth is that we have suffered from a significant reduction in seat numbers. We believe that there is enough space for CAL, for Inter-Caribbean, and for any other mechanism that we resolve. And if you dig deep into the industry, and you can talk to CAL, you can talk to others, part of the constraint is the absence of capacity of getting planes and pilots. And therefore, you can't just snap your finger and have access to both.
Motley said a cooperative approach to the resolution of the issue of inter-regional travel is needed, rather than depending on a single airline to remedy the issue. Reporting for GBN News, Beverly Tellisford.
In international news, NATO leaders say Ukraine should be able to join the military alliance in the future, but stopped short of offering Kyiv an immediate invitation, angering President Volodymyr Zelensky. Al Jazeera's Jonah Hall reports.
Always keen to stress their unity, NATO members gathered during the second year of a war in Europe. This time, those small cracks are showing which alliance leaders are working hard to overcome. Central to this meeting is the question of Ukraine's possible future membership, promised at some point, with some allies pushing for a fast-track process to begin now, while others, notably Germany and the United States, believe the time is not yet right.
We reaffirmed that Ukraine will become a member of NATO and agreed to remove the requirement for a membership action plan. This would change Ukraine's membership path from a two-step process to a one-step process. We also made clear that we will issue an invitation for Ukraine to join NATO when allies agree and conditions are met.
But that falls well short of Ukrainian expectations. President Volodymyr Zelensky got a hero's welcome in Vilnius, but en route he tweeted that anything less than a firm invitation now and a timetable for accession would be absurd, amounting to uncertainty, he said, that Russia would view as weakness.
This is the language of hesitation, and Putin understands only the language of force. So that's something which our allies should understand. But it is not a catastrophe. There is the word invitation. Ukraine will skip membership action plan stage.
Many, especially members of the alliance's eastern flank, would tend to agree with Ukraine, while others, including Germany and the United States, believe that with the war still on and no way of knowing what any possible peace agreement might look like, now is simply not the time to commit the whole of NATO to Ukraine's defense against future Russian aggression. There are other points of tension, unease over the supply of cluster munitions to Ukraine by the United States. Most NATO members are signatories to a treaty banning their use, but not Ukraine, the US or Russia. And among pledges of further military support came the promise by France to follow the UK in supplying long-range missiles to Ukraine. One potential difficulty was overcome on the eve of the summit when Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan lifted his year-long objection to formerly neutral Sweden joining the alliance. 31 members will soon become 32. NATO expanding because of the war in Ukraine, even as the war exerts pressures that test its unity. Jonah Hull, Al Jazeera, Vilnius.
In sports, Trinidad and Tobago beat Guyana by 6 wickets to earn their first win of the West Indies Rising Stars Under-19 Men's 50-over Championship on Monday.
Guyana bat first and were all out for 146 in 40.1 of their allotted 50 overs. Thaddeus Lovell top scored with 33, Shamai Yearwood scored 29 and Rivaldo Phillips 20. TT Under-19 spinner Andrew Rambaran had best figures of 4 for 27. Ronnie Lester Pereira took 3 for 8. TNT was well on its way, reaching 136 for 4 in 38 overs before the match was delayed by rain. The Duckworth-Lewis method was implemented to determine a result and TT emerged victorious. Kyle Ramdu top scored in the winning effort with 37. Justin Jagasa made 31. Captain Rajiv Ramnath scored 21 and Kyle Kisundath 16.
And that's the news on PBCJ. Thanks so much for watching.